However successful the boycott of grapes may be, one of the big problems that we face with is the interference of the Defense Department in buying grapes to such an extent that they're seriously hampering the success of this campaign to get workers to have a union. The Defense Department has upped the shipments of grapes to Vietnam by 800%. We estimate that they're shipping to Vietnam now an average of about 8 pounds per man. We're very concerned about this, and we are protesting to the federal government. We'll be demonstrating here in New York in a couple of days.
Well, he also says that you've opposed every suggested legislative solution to the problem of farm labor, and he says you want no legislation unless it's precisely what you want.
We've opposed the only suggested legislation in the last 100 years by agricultural employers was one introduced by Senator Murphy of California, which prohibits the right of people to strike, and we certainly are opposed to that. Workers should have the right to strike any time. That's the only suggestion they've made, and we are opposed to that foursquare. Given us here in New York. I have a short statement to make, and then I have a person with me that I'd like to introduce to you. I'm in New York today as a part of a nationwide tour on a campaign to ask consumers to refrain from buying California table grapes until the farm workers are able to get their employers to recognize their union. The boycott has been going on now for 16 months against California grapes, and we see that in New York City it's been one of the most effective places that we have. Shipments of grapes to New York City have decreased by 55%. Every major store in the city is not carrying grapes with the exception of Christie's, the only one that has not been willing to respond to consumer demands that they stop the sales of grapes. Another part of the campaign is to acquaint the consuming public with the problem of pesticide poisoning. Farm workers are being affected very seriously, very gravely, with the poisoning by pesticides. We feel that this is not only the concern of the worker, but it's also the concern of the consumer, because we find that pesticide residues are in grapes. We've tested grapes now for over 6 months in many parts of the country, and we find that they are always present. This morning, I have with me to my right Mrs. Ruth Best, who is a consumer in New York, who just filed a suit, and she will tell you about that suit. Mrs. Best, would you like to over here? Let me see.
Chavez, the president of the Fruit Company has testified before the Congressional Committee, and he says that Mr. Chavez, what is it you want? Is it union recognition? Is that it?
I think that's what the workers want. That's what the strike's all about. Having the right to organize into our own associations is the issue. The issue is one of poor workers, powerless, with no federal law protecting their rights to organize against growers who are powerful and influential. And it's the biggest workforce yet unorganized in America, and it's we feel that these workers have the right to organize, and they should be given the right to organize.
Mr. Chavez, Chavez demonstrated against the Defense Department on Friday.
ticks. And you've launched this poison scare on this pesticide, and he says that what you are conducting actually is a campaign to grab control of the nation's food supply. What about that?
I think that Mr. Bianco knows full well that there have been no tactics in our movement, no terror tactics, and that our movement is nonviolent. He also knows that by his own admission and by the tests conducted by us and by the FDA, that in every single test that has been tested, there's been found pesticide residues in every single one. This is not a scare tactic, this is a real issue. And they know it, but they refuse to deal with it because to deal with it they would have to also deal with the union.